In 1932, deep in rural Alabama, a government experiment began that would quietly destroy lives for 40 years. The men involved were never told the truth. They were never given real treatment. And most disturbing of all, the people running the experiment knew exactly what they were doing. This is the story of the Tuskegee Syphilis Experiment, one of the darkest chapters in American medical history. At the start of the 20th century, syphilis was a feared disease. There was no reliable cure, and if left untreated, it could cause severe health problems over time. In the early 1930s, the U.S. Public Health Service partnered with the Tuskegee Institute in Alabama to study the long-term effects of syphilis in the human body. But this was never meant to be a normal medical study. The researchers recruited around 600 African American men, most of them poor sharecroppers. About 399 of them already had syphilis. The rest were used as a control group. None of the men were told they had syphilis. Instead, they were told they were being treated for something vague, called bad blood, a local term used for many illnesses. The men were promised free medical exams, meals, and burial insurance. For people living in extreme poverty, this sounded like help. They trusted the doctors. They trusted the government. That trust would be betrayed. In reality, the experiment was designed to observe what would happen if syphilis was left untreated. The goal was not to cure the men, but to watch the disease progress until death. From the beginning, treatment was deliberately withheld. As years passed, the men grew older. Their health slowly declined. Some became blind. Some developed heart problems. Others suffered neurological damage. Still, no one told them the truth. In the 1940s, everything changed, or at least it should have. Penicillin was discovered as a safe and effective cure for syphilis. By the mid-1940s, it became widely available and was considered standard treatment. At this point, the experiment should have ended immediately. Instead, it continued. The men in Tuskegee were actively prevented from receiving penicillin. Doctors made sure they were excluded from military treatment programs during World War II. Local physicians were instructed not to treat them. Even when public health clinics began offering cures, the researchers stepped in to stop it. The experiment was no longer passive observation. It had become intentional harm. The men continued to believe they were being helped. Some were subjected to painful spinal taps, which doctors misleadingly described as special treatments. These procedures were done not to help them, but to gather data. Over time, many of the men died from syphilis-related complications. Others passed the disease to their wives. Children were born with congenital syphilis, suffering consequences they never chose. All of this happened under the supervision of the United States government. For decades, the experiment remained largely unknown to the public. It was openly discussed within medical circles, published in journals, and funded by federal agencies. Yet no one stopped it. Then, in 1972, the truth finally came out. A whistleblower named Peter Buxton, who had worked as a public health investigator, leaked information about the study to the press. When the story was published, the reaction was immediate and explosive. The American public was shocked. International outrage followed. How could this happen? How could doctors allow this? How could the government justify it? The experiment was finally shut down that same year, 40 years after it began. By then, the damage was irreversible. Survivors and families of the victims filed a lawsuit against the U.S. government. In 1974, a settlement was reached, providing financial compensation and lifetime medical benefits to survivors and their families. But money could never undo what had been done. In 1997, more than 2 decades later, President Bill Clinton formally apologized on behalf of the United States. Standing before survivors and their families, he acknowledged the injustice, the racism, and the betrayal of trust. But even with an apology, the legacy of Tuskegee remains. The experiment left a deep scar on the relationship between African American communities and the medical system. Even today, distrust of government health programs can be traced back to this event. It changed how medical research is conducted, leading to strict ethical standards. Informed consent laws, and institutional review boards. These rules exist because of Tuskegee. The most chilling part of this story is not just what happened, but how easily it happened. Ordinary systems, respected institutions, educated professionals, all participating in something profoundly unethical, year after year. No secret laboratory, no rogue scientists, just silence, compliance, and indifference. The Tuskegee Syphilis Experiment stands as a warning, a reminder that science without ethics is dangerous, that power without accountability can destroy lives, and that trust, once broken, takes generations to rebuild. Because the question isn't just what happened back then. The real question is, could it happen again?